Thank you for tuning in to the MBL Network, and you're watching the MBL Blitz.
What's going on, MBL? Welcome to another episode of the Blitz podcast. As always, I'm your host, TFA, and with me today is not my normal co-host, Chunky, but we've got Doughboy with me here on the co-host. Doughboy, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for filling in with Chunky. We know Chunky had a lot going on with work, so we're glad to have you here. Let's jump into it right away this week. First topic I want to touch on is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. Everybody knows how hot this team is. This is going to be our Who's Hot, Who's Cold segment. And this week we're focusing on the hot. Timbo has those Chiefs at 13-1. They just lost a game to the Redskins, who are also 13-1. Currently probably the two best teams in the MBL right now. A Goliath showdown here at the end of the year. Do you think that the Chiefs can carry this on and are the favorite to win the Super Bowl? Or do you at least think they're the favorite to make it there in the AFC?
Yeah, I didn't think the Chiefs were going to lose. I thought they were going to run the tables. Their team is firing on all cylinders. I actually had the ability to watch them last week when they played, and they absolutely went and destroyed the Raiders after that tough, gut-wrenching loss to the Redskins. And they seem to be a team on a mission. They're the top team on turnover differential, and that is a huge stat. That means that they're taking the ball away and they're not giving it back to the other team, which is a great success factor for winning a Super Bowl in the NBL.
Yeah, and the Chiefs, their offense isn't that explosive. They don't have anything really that they're going to, light up the field with on offense. But you look at that defense, like you were saying, I mean, top in turnover ratio, this was a team that a couple seasons ago, everybody was getting a lot of grief to because of the contract that they gave Jalen Ramsey. They've got, one of the highest paid secondaries in all of the NBL, but clearly it's paying off for them. I think that the Chiefs are in a prime position. I definitely think they're probably going to finish the regular season at 15-1 if I had to guess. Maybe 14-2 if they sit their starters there in week 17. But I think this is definitely the favorite in the AFC going into the playoffs. Let's switch over to the NFC now. I want to talk about another hot team, and specifically a hot player. That's going to be middle linebacker Duvon Hayward of the Giants. A lot has been said. Eric G came in here, newer owner, came in and he really turned this Giants team around. He's got one of the best defenses in the NBL right now, and a big reason is because of Duvon Hayward. What can you tell us about Duvon Hayward and how great of a year he's having?
Yeah, Duvon Hayward was their first pick in the recent draft. They had 2 top 15 picks, and Hayward's definitely paid off very well. Their other guy, Poteet, the corner, is doing excellent, and those two together has really turned this defense into a machine. Duvon has 31 tackles with 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 7 interceptions. They got the Giants locked up in the 5th seed. They're on a little bit of a downturn. They lost 2 games late in a row. They have to finish out strong, but third in defense. They're only allowing 189 pass yards, 48 rush yards, and I'm looking for the Giants to make a deep run in the playoffs if this defense can keep it up. And Duvon Hayward is just a breakout star. I mean, rookie season, probably going to win Rookie of the Year in the NFC, and I see big things for years to come with this guy.
Yeah, and you talk about the defensive side of the ball. Defense definitely wins championships in the NBL. Normally you see some of the more offensive teams up there, but normally they can't get there without the defense. So I definitely agree with you. I think the Giants could make a deep run into the playoffs as long as Duvon Hayward is consistent. Him and Poteet, like you were saying, I think they need to be consistent all the way through the playoffs. Let's jump over now to a guy who is not off to a hot start. by any means. We're going to talk about Jarrett Ripkowski. This guy was the #1 overall pick in the draft 2 seasons ago. He had a season to mature in one of the best quarterback drafts we've ever seen. And now in his second season, it doesn't look like he's improving at all. You look at the graphic here, 14 touchdowns, 31 interceptions. I mean, that's almost a 1-to-2 touchdown to interception ratio. Terrible QBR. Do you think it's too early to consider him a bust, or do you definitely think that he's in the bust category?
I think it's pretty concrete. I mean, first 2 seasons, he's had 72 interceptions, only 30 TDs. His QBR went from a 63. Right now, I think he's floating around a 70. This was a few games back when we captured this graphic. And just not working out. I think that with the offensive line troubles, the coaching decisions, the play calling is not fitting his style. And I think he's a firm bust. I don't think Green Bay is going to be able to recover from this. I think it's set back the franchise for many years. And it's going to take a while for Green Bay to dig themselves out of this hole. But Ripkowski, he's done.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you. You've had 2 seasons. You haven't done anything. You've kind of been a mockery since you've been in the league. And the Packers aren't getting any better. When you draft a quarterback, you're supposed to improve. That's the position where you're really hoping to improve your record and build around him. They haven't done that. I don't see things getting any better for the Packers here as we close out Madden 17. So it'll be interesting to see if they stick with him or maybe kind of look a different route this offseason.
And don't forget, this is the team that gave up 2 top 10 draft picks to get this guy first overall. And there was 5 QBs that got drafted in the first round. They gave up a lot of assets, and it's not paying off. Bad move on the Green Bay Packers organization.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks that were drafted after him. You got Darby, Zot, all of these guys, they're not having great starts to their career, but I think every single one of these guys is better than Ripkowski has been so far. So
easily.
Really...
Look at Ely with Buffalo Bills. I think he's leading the league right now, or tied for the most yards, and he's having a good season. Zot got New England back in the playoffs, I believe, after that overtime win today against the Saints. And, then we have Darby. He's coming around. He's had a good late into the season. So we could say that everybody other than maybe the Panthers QB, because they went and drafted another QB the next year, but they waited. They got him later in the first. They did it correctly, and then they brought in another QB to compete. Green Bay stuck with Ripkowski, so wish the best for the guy, but I don't think he's going to be much longer in the NBL.
Yeah, some real sad days over there in Green Bay. Next, I want to switch our focus over to the AFC. We've been talking a little bit about division rivalries. I know the Commissioner's Corner podcast touched on the AFC East division rivalry between the Bills and the Jets. This week, we're going to focus on the Steelers and the Bengals. This is probably the longest tenured rivalry in the MBL. This spans back a couple Maddens now.
I love this rivalry.
I mean, these two have been going at it 2 times a year for, probably the past 10, 12, 13 seasons now. You got Sonny and Lip. It's always a good battle. Who do you think is going to prevail? I mean, Lip has been on the right side of this rivalry probably a lot more than Sonny has. Lip's always seeming to go deep into the playoffs. We know that Sonny struggles once he makes it into the playoffs. I believe that the Bengals currently are 1 game back with 2 games to go. Do you think there's any way that the Bengals could catch up and kind of get over that hump of this rivalry and beat the Steelers this year?
You know what? I love the movie Rudy, and I always root for the little guy, but time and history has always shown that the Steelers are like that big brother, and they're going to dunk the Bengals in the toilet again, and they're going to take the division, and it's going to be another depressing offseason for Sonny and his Cincinnati Bengals.
And that's definitely not what Sonny wants to hear. He's had some struggles this year. I think both of them have. I think this is probably the worst year that I've seen that kind of rivalry. Lip's having a very off year. I believe he's 9-5 right now. And then the Bengals are 8-6. So I think that this is definitely an off year for him, but it's always an interesting rivalry to follow. I think that where Lip always gets the upper hand is the turnover battle. You look at the screen, turnover differential on the year, he's at +8. The Bengals and Sonny are at -4. So I think that that's a really, really big reason as to why Lip is so dominant in this rivalry. But another reason I think is Lip has always got the upper hand when it comes to passing. He can pass the ball all over the field. And a big reason because of that this year is Martavius Bryant, which I think Martavius Bryant might be the player to watch for the rest of the season. I think as he goes is how the Steelers' season is going to play out. If the Steelers and Lip want to make a deep playoff run, I think Martavius Bryant's going to be the guy to watch. I mean, you look at the graphic, 51 catches, 1,067 receiving yards, which is right there near the top of the league, 8 touchdowns. He's leading the team in receiving yards. What do you think? How deep do you think that Martavius Bryant and Dak Prescott can carry the Steelers this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. Bryant's always been the Robin to Antonio Brown's Batman, and then in the recent seasons, it's been a complete 180. Brown is just not. He's a shell of himself. Let's be honest. I think he's 5th on the depth chart right now. He's battling to get on the field. But I want to say that not only does Martavius Bryant have to play, Dak Prescott cannot turn the ball over. He's had some horrible games this season, and ever since they got rid of Big Ben, they've struggled with consistency on not turning the ball over. They're going to be able to score. They're going to get the yards. They're going to get the passing game going. But if he throws interceptions, it's lights out in the playoffs. You can't make those mistakes. I think that Nate Silver from MBL just released a top 10 teams for turnover differential, and the top 5 teams are all 1 and 2 seeds in the playoff picture right now. So we know in the NBL that if you can create turnovers and not give the ball back, you're going to win games, and Dak Prescott's going to have to be better with the ball in the playoffs.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm going to be interested to see how this division rivalry continues, especially going into next year with them having both off years. It's going to be really interesting to follow them into the off season and see kind of what moves they make to try to get the upper hand on the other. I want to switch it over to you now. We're getting late in the season. We're almost to the end here. I want you to give us your top 10 rookie big board here. Let's see what you got, and let's see who guys should be focusing in on here as the season winds down.
Yeah, I always love the draft, and we're coming up on the new NBL draft, and it is full of defensive pass rushers in the top. Last year was weak in this area, so it's awesome. Teams that need that pass rusher, you have a guy who's number 1 right now named Lincoln Norman out of the U, and he is a machine all over the field, can cover, can blitz. He's going to disrupt some teams. I look for him to go in the top 5, possibly number 1, but we know that quarterbacks and corners are always there, but that's not a strong corner class. The number 2 guy is Ben Maxey. He's a true defensive end. He's 6'5", 320, can get the strength off the edge, almost like a J.J. Watt kind of guy. Maybe, I don't want to put anybody in that category of J.J. Watt, but he has the size and the strength to make some impressive plays. And he can hold the edge in a 3-4, and he can rush in a 4-3. I had Tevin Burgess going in, all the measurable 6'6" Clemson guy. But we did just see that Gary Finneran, he's had 3 great games to close out his college season, and he was able to win the Heisman. So I think Gary Finneran is going to skyrocket. He's not on this list, but I think he's going to be the best QB after what he's done to end his college career. He had a fabulous stretch in the back half of the football season. And we have the Brandon Glayton out of LSU, best wide receiver, 6'2", good size, can get down the field. Then I have Sanchez Woodley out of Florida State. He's also 6'2", cover corner, press corner. I got another QB out of Nebraska, Courtney Prather. And then pass rusher, Derek Stark out of Wisconsin. Safety, Antone Combs. And then we got a tackle out of the Miami with Houston Free. I can't imagine the practices with Norman and Free going after each other. Those are going to be top 10 players. And then Michigan State, I do like my halfbacks. Kendrick Lane's the best halfback. I know last draft special, I got a hard time for putting halfbacks there, but they make an impact, and teams with a running game in the NBL do very well. Ball control is really important.
Yeah, I can tell you right now that there's a good chance I might be looking for a halfback in the first round. So I don't think that a halfback there is really out of the question. You see, last year, I believe it was the Patriots. They got a halfback early in the first round or middle of the first round, and he's been lighting it up this year. He's been doing real well.
Yeah, Eugene Hubert. I mean, I had him top 15 in my mock, and he's paying off. I'm telling you, running back is a smart play if he has the skills. You definitely want to get a run game going.
Yeah, if you open up the run game and become two-dimensional on offense and you're not just stuck with a passing game, those are the teams that seem to do really, really well in the MBL. You look at the good seasons that teams have had. You look at the emergence of Bubba Dillon there in Detroit and how that's really helped them, step it up to the next level. You look at Alston over there in New Orleans, even though they're struggling a little bit, Alston's still a big reason as to why that team is winning. You look at the Raiders, myself with the Jaguars, all of these teams that are in the playoff hunt or playoff teams, they have good running games. So I think it's definitely important to have a halfback. I want to touch on Tevin Burgess real quick before we get to anything else. Do you definitely think that he's the best quarterback in this draft? Because from what I've seen, I think that he shows a lot of potential.
I think at one point in the season he was. Like I said, I think Gary Finneran, after his stretch to end the season, him winning the Heisman, I believe he is the best quarterback now. And he shot up halfway through the season. He was just average. But his stretch to close out the college football has been impressive. And I think Gary Finneran will actually be the first quarterback to go off. And he'll be up there in the mock draft that comes out. We do every year, the draft bonanza. He'll be my top QB going on the draft.
Well, that's an interesting thing to note. All right, enough draft talk. Let's finish this episode off by talking about the playoff picture. We've got 2 weeks until the playoffs start. So let's go ahead. We're going to look at the AFC and the NFC playoff picture. Right now, we've got the Chiefs are obviously the number 1 seed right now in the AFC, followed by the Titans. And then to finish out the division leaders, you've got the Steelers at 3 and the Patriots at 4, and you've got the 2 wild cards with the Jags and the Raiders. In the NFC, you've got the Redskins and the Lions, and then at 3 and 4, you've got the Rams and the Saints. I think that 3 and 4. I really think that 1 through 4 in the NFC is pretty set. I don't see any changes through, or even 1 through 5, I guess you could say, with the Giants there at 5 and the Vikings at 6. I don't see many changes happening to the NFC except for that 6th spot. In the AFC, I mean, it's still anybody's game. It's still wide open. I mean, the Titans right now, the Titans could finish anywhere from 2 to 6. They could be anywhere in that 2 to 6 range. I think that the Patriots or whoever wins the AFC East is pretty set at 4. They're not going to be able to catch any of the other division leaders.
I believe the Patriots might have clinched. I believe that their win today, they clinched that East. That East is a weak division, but I think they are 2 games ahead of the next opponent, and they might have clinched this time at 8 and 6 right now. I think they're in. I think that division is over.
Yeah, and that's true. So if that is the case and they did clinch, I think that the AFC though is still pretty wide open. Outside of the Chiefs at 1 and the Patriots at 4. I could see any number of teams. I mean, you've still got the Texans and the Bengals that are in the hunt. The Chargers would need something really drastic to happen to get in. I mean, even the Bengals and Texans right now they're a game back of the Raiders and 2 back of the Jags with 2 left. So both of those teams need a lot of help right now. What team and what race are you most kind of looking forward to here as the season finishes out? Who do you think could make the biggest jump, or what teams are you kind of keying in on?
Well, I think your team, the Jags, have the most opportunity. You get to face the Bengals, and then you close out the season with the Titans. And if you can capture wins going throughout, you can jump. The Jaguars can jump from the 5th seed, I believe, to the 2nd seed. So they have the ball in their court. They just have to go and win the games. I think Texans are kind of on a downturn. They've lost 3 in a row. They do not look like the same team at the first half of the season. I think the Raiders are going to get in, and the Bengals are going to lose the division to the Steelers, and I think they're going to be out. I think all these teams in the AFC are actually going to hold steady. I just think that there's a chance for the Jaguars to grab this 2 seed, and that would put the Titans down at the 5th seed. And the NFC, I think, is a different picture. They're really solid, 1 through 5, but the 6th seed is still really up in the air. Chicago Bears, they don't have the greatest record, but it's a weak 6 seed in the NFC. They might be under 500, the 6 seed getting in. And it's just, I think we're going to talk a little bit more, but the Vikings is the team I want to watch and see if they can close out. They've struggled. Bombers division has not had the best success outside of the Lions in getting to the playoffs. Bombers controlled that division for 14 seasons. So it's always nice to see another NFC North team make it to the playoffs. So I'm rooting for the Vikings, but I don't know if they can make it. I want to see what their schedule looks like coming up to close out the last 2 games.
Yeah, and like you were saying, let's take a look at their upcoming schedule here. The Vikings right now are currently sitting at 8-6. The Bears are currently at 6-7. They still have to play their Week 15 game. So technically, if they win, they're only going to be a game back. What really kind of stands out to me here, though, they've won 2 in a row. But you look at the last 2 games of the year, and they've got to play the Steelers and the Lions. And that is about as brutal of the last 2 games as you could possibly see. I don't see them having any shot at beating the Lions in Week 17. Actually, I'll take that back. If the Lions rest their starters, if they've clinched a bye and they rest their starters, I think that the Vikings might have a shot to pull that game out. So I do still think that they have a chance. But you look at the Bears' schedule, the Bears' remaining schedule is much easier. I believe they have the Seahawks in Week 16, and I can't remember who they have in Week 17, but I know that it is not a crazy hard schedule to end the year. Honestly, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Vikings to make the playoffs, even though they're a game up with 2 games left. I just don't see it. I think the Vikings are going to lose out. I think the Bears are going to at least win 2 of the last 3, and I think that's going to give the Bears the edge in that division. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Draco's Bears is just an amazing team to watch. A few seasons back, I don't know if anyone remembers, this team was 9-1 and missed the playoffs. And this year, they have struggled mightily, and they might make the playoffs with a sub-500 or break-even record. It's just pretty crazy what the Bears go through, but I love seeing these NFC North wildcard teams battling it out. I'm sure they want to lick at the Bomber in the playoffs, and I'm rooting for both of them. I want to see them make it. I think the Rams at the 3 seed is pretty much locked in, so good luck against him. And I'm excited for the playoffs. 2 weeks out, and we're ready to start.
Yeah, so we're closing in, like you said, we're 2 weeks out. That's what your playoff picture is looking like right now. Like we said, I don't think there's going to be a ton of changes, but you could see some craziness happen. You never know what's going to happen in the last couple weeks. That's going to do it for this week's show. Make sure you tune in next week to the Commissioner Corners podcast. I'm assuming that we're probably going to be around Super Bowl time at that point, if not getting ready for the off season. So be sure to tune in, as we'll probably be in the middle of the playoff push. See what's going on, see what teams are taking advantage of others. It's going to be a really, really interesting year. I think we have a lot of teams that are actually contending, and a lot of new teams and new faces that are going to get a taste of the playoffs this year. So that's going to be really exciting. Doe, I want to thank you for coming on, man. Thank you for stepping up, taking over for Chunky. I know Chunky had a lot going on. So thank you for coming on the show. We look forward to having you again, and I know we're going to have you on for that live draft special. You have anything you want to say to everybody about that special that we'll have coming up here at the end of the year?
Yeah, I just, look forward to getting on with my partner Gov. We're going to go at it again. Everyone knows that I'm better, and I think we're going to prove it this time around. So I look forward to spending some time on the Draft Bonanza, and I appreciate you having me, TFA, and you guys enjoy your evening.
Well, thanks, Doe. Glad to have you here. Thanks for filling in. That's going to do it for this episode of the Blitz podcast. As always, I'm your host, TFA.